In the most ancient times, before the world took its known form, Eshu had no wealth, no lands, no rivers. He had no profession, no sacred duties like the other Orishas. His life was marked by wandering and aimless drifting. Eshu moved through the world like a restless spirit, going from place to place without a greater purpose, without a fixed point, without an objective. He walked alone, without a home or the responsibilities that other Orishas carried. That was a time of learning, but also a period of uncertainty for Eshu. He did not yet know what his role would be in the grand cycle of life. But Eshu's life was about to change. One day, during his wandering, Eshu arrived at the home of Obatala, the great Orisha of creation. Obatala, with his serenity and grandeur, was always busy crafting human beings, shaping every detail of what would become humanity. He worked tirelessly, creating men and women, sculpting their hands, feet, mouths, eyes, and bodies. It was an arduous and important task, but despite his wisdom and power, Obatala felt lonely in his mission. He had no time for visitors, for the offerings that arrived at his door, or for the small details of daily life. His focus was on creation and the construction of the world. Eshu, curious and always observant, began visiting Obatala every day. The Orisha of creation, though deeply immersed in his work, noticed Eshu's constant presence. Eshu did not come to ask for anything or to disrupt Obatala's work. He simply sat there, watching with an attentiveness unmatched by anyone else. He observed the elder Orisha molding the human body, noting how hands and feet were crafted, how mouths, eyes, and all the details of the human form were sculpted with perfection. Eshu would sit there for hours, paying close attention to everything. Each day, Eshu absorbed more knowledge. He did not speak much, but his mind was constantly active, absorbing every movement of Obatala, learning the secrets of creation. It was a form of silent learning, a profound education where Eshu asked no questions, but watched with keen, curious eyes. For 16 long years, Eshu remained at Obatala's house. He observed the creation of humans with growing interest and learned every detail of the process. He learned how Obatala, with his divine skill, brought men and women into being. Eshu saw how each being was carefully shaped, how muscles and bones took form, how eyes gained life. But what impressed Eshu the most was how Obatala created the destiny of each being, giving them hands to walk, feet to walk, eyes to see, and mouths to communicate. Eshu observed how Obatala dedicated himself tirelessly to his task but also noticed the challenges he faced. People came from far and wide but did not stay long. They would arrive, bring their offerings, admire Obatala's work, and leave quickly. 4 days, 8 days at most, that was the time they spent there, and they learned nothing. They brought gifts for Obatala but did not grasp the depth of what he was doing. Only Eshu, with his cunning and patience, truly dedicated himself to learning everything. Over time, Eshu realized that Obatala needed help. The elder Orisha was overwhelmed by the number of humans appearing each day. He no longer had time to deal with visitors or tend to the offerings arriving at his house. Obatala focused so much on creation that he could no longer attend to everyone bringing gifts or making requests. Eshu, who had observed this for so long, saw an opportunity. He had learned everything about creating humans and could now assist Obatala in a unique way. Obatala, realizing he could no longer manage the burden of visitors and offerings, called Eshu and said, "My child, you have been very observant, very attentive. Now, the time has come for you to take on an important task. I want you to go to the crossroads where those who come to my house pass. Stay there, at the entrance to my home, and do not let anyone pass without bringing an offering for me. I will continue with creation, but you will be responsible for receiving the gifts and delivering what needs to be brought to me." Eshu, with his sharp eyes, immediately understood the responsibility Obatala was placing on his shoulders. He knew that he would now have to work in a different way. The crossroads would be his new home, his new post. Eshu, with his skill, cleverness, and energy, accepted the challenge. He understood that the crossroads were places of choice, transitions, meetings, and partings. It was there that decisions were made, and he would now have the power to decide who could pass and who could not. Eshu positioned himself at the crossroads, armed with his ogo, a powerful staff, ready to take on his new role. He began collecting the offerings brought to Obatala's house. He received the gifts from visitors and delivered them to Obatala, who patiently continued his work. Eshu performed his job efficiently, and Obatala, impressed by the mischievous Orisha's dedication, decided to reward him. The reward came unexpectedly. Obatala, seeing Eshu's dedication, decreed that, from now on, anyone passing through Eshu's crossroads would have to pay him something. This was no longer just a task of guarding Obatala's house but a new role, a new power. Eshu would become the lord of the crossroads, and no one could pass without giving him something in return. Anyone coming to Obatala's house would also have to pay Eshu for his vigilance, protection, and the handling of offerings. Even those returning from Obatala's house would have to give Eshu a small share. The mischievous Orisha would become the guardian of transitions, the intermediary between the material and spiritual worlds. Eshu began to settle at the crossroads, building his own home there. He became the master of the place, a point of encounter, exchange, and power. He grew wealthy and powerful because no one could pass through the crossroads without paying him something. Eshu was in control, and those who wished to cross his path had to respect his rules. Armed with his ogo, Eshu used it to deter anyone who tried to bypass his vigilance. No one could pass without accounting to him. He performed his duties well and became indispensable. Eshu was no longer the wandering Orisha without direction. He had a clear mission and a place of power. His home was at the crossroads, where he became the central figure, the point through which everyone passed and where all had to leave offerings. Eshu had earned his place in the world, and no one could ignore his power. Thus, Eshu gained control over the crossroads, power over transitions, and the right to receive offerings previously destined only for Obatala. He became the lord of the crossroads, and no one could pass without paying him, whether through an offering or a life choice. Eshu became wealthy, powerful, and respected, the intermediary between worlds, the guardian of paths, deciding who passed and who stayed. This Itan shows how Eshu, through careful observation and silent learning, transformed his position and gained a role of great power and importance. By understanding Obatala's needs and placing himself strategically, Eshu claimed authority over the crossroads, becoming an essential Orisha in the lives of humans and the organization of the spiritual world.